There is another explanation of what Nasi is, not found explicitly in the Islamic historiographical tradition, that is nonetheless extremely plausible and likely, which is related to calendrical practices under Rabbinical Judaism. Of course, Muhammad ﷺ had at least a basic familiarity with how the Jewish calendar was operated under Rabbinical Judaism, because he was living with Jews in Medina. Among the rabbis, the calendar was managed by a centralized authority located in Palestine. That authority was the Sanhedrin, the supreme rabbinical court, from the Greek word synedrion, or council, which was headed by a president whose title was the Nasi. Among other duties, the Sanhedrin determined how the calendar was managed, with the Nasi having the final word. Then they sent out messengers from the central location to the various communities in the diaspora to communicate the decisions that had been made by the Sanhedrin and the Nasi over how the calendar would be managed in the coming year. The process sounds very similar to what is being described in the Sira, when the Nasa of Banu Kanana stand up at the Kaaba and announce annually at the pilgrimage how the calendar is going to be managed for the year to come. It is possible that there is some connection between the practice ascribed to the Nasa'a and the practice of the messengers being sent out from Palestine to announce rabbinical calendrical decisions. Because the title of the official determining the calendar in Rabbinical Judaism is Nasi, and because the practices of the Jewish calendar were familiar to the Prophet ﷺ and his community, there is every reason to think that when the word Nasi appears in this revelation, it is referring to the Nasi who runs the calendar in Rabbinical Judaism. When the Quran says that the Nasi is nothing but an addition to unbelief, it could be talking about this authority that is ascribed to the Nasi. The Babylonian Talmud, Tractate Sanhedrin, folio page 11a, describes the authority of the Nasi over the calendar. Here, quote, "Our rabbis taught, a year cannot be intercalated unless the Nasi sanctions it. It once happened that Rabban Gamaliel was away obtaining permission from the governor in Syria, and as his return was delayed, the year was intercalated, subject to Rabban Gamaliel's approval. When Rabban Gamaliel returned, he gave his approval, with the result that the intercalation held good." So here we see that the Nasi, Rabban Gamaliel, is responsible for intercalation and makes the decision on whether an intercalation is valid. We also see that at this time the Jewish calendar was not tabular yet, and intercalation was not happening on a regular schedule within the 19 years. The decisions are being made top-down by a centralized authority. This is reminiscent of an exercise of religious authority by human beings, which is something that is criticized regularly in the Quran as a form of ascribing partners to God. We see the notion of ascribing partners to God applied to the situation of people exercising religious authority just a few verses prior to verses 36 and 37 in Surat Tawbah. In verse 31 of Surat Tawbah, Jews and Christians are criticized for taking their rabbis and monks as lords in place of God, whereas God is declared to be far above what they ascribe to him as partners. Thus the Jews and Christians are described in the lead-up to verses 36 and 37 as mushrikun, ascribing partners to God in the form of rabbis and priests. The Quran is criticizing religious authorities as exercising power on behalf of God as if they were God's partners. For someone to exercise the power to decide how the calendar is managed in a given year would be a human exercise of power in God's place that would be prohibited in Islam. So that could be what Nasi means in verse 37 of Surat Tawbah.